What's up all my secret and not so secret admirers? It's me, you know, me. I am so glad I can get back to normal. That previous video was such a drag on my style. The emo style drains people of their energy and will. I honestly think all that black makeup, hair gel, piercings and chains, that stuff must be part of an ancient ritualistic curse. It just makes you feel down when you wear it, like it is sucking the life out of you. Too bad we cannot capture that energy though. Every hot topic could have a small power plant in front of it to give electricity to the shopping center. Anyway, I am back and full of groove as ever. You wanna test me, do you? Well, it will have to wait. I am busy. This is my first attempt at one of these serious videos that Pony and Admin do. When they actually do them. No Name does it well sometimes too, but so far I have only made comedic videos. Well, what do I want to talk about then? Politics? Love advice? Actually, I should make a video about love advice. For the moment, we are going to talk about how to remake games cause I am getting sick of it. We seem to be living in an era of remakes. Every big movie or game that is to be released has to already have a large audience dedicated to it invested in a previous iteration of the series. And you know what? That sucks. I was originally just going to talk about Jet Set Radio. Now that I have played through both games, I thought I would give it a review, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized there is a bit that needs to be covered to explain why Jet Set is such an interesting game. So with that in mind, let's talk about everything I hate about game development. Take for instance the Ratchet & Clank remake. It was such a disappointment from the original that seemed to be an advertisement for the concurrent movie made for it at the time. Such a waste of potential for a simplified story in HD graphics. Here is another example for you. Do you remember back when there didn't need to be a new superhero movie or show every 6 months? I am sick of all this stuff, so me and No Name stick with the Japanese content, and now that is getting oversaturated with isekai trash. You know what, life is just starting to suck. Maybe I am just still under the influence of the emo and feel pessimistic. Maybe I should start wearing that stuff more if I keep talking like this, who knows. Anyway, I think I am getting off topic a little bit. So since it follows that most everything is going to be a remake, how do we make it worth the time? Enjoy my simple random number step process to answer our issues here. I will still try to make this entertaining, but this is primarily going to be a critique of modern trends in game productions. So why is it hard to get a classic game currently? I could go into a lot of detail about how games changed after the games of service became normal, but let's just be simple and agree that most games currently coming out tend to suck. I don't want to hear about how your favorite indie or small development company has done an amazing game recently. The majority of modern games just suck. I am not all that old, but I remember the release of the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube. In both cases, there was an insane amount of good games that were made for these systems. That being the case, why is it that with probably more games made per year now, very few of them become major hits? Let's get some obvious points out of the way. With so many games now for everything, the chances of finding the diamond becomes harder. That much is obvious, and I think it is a reasonable excuse if that was the only issue with new games. But just like what Miyazaki said about anime is true, and often misunderstood, the same applies here. With the increase in popularity of gaming, the amount of companies in a rush to put out a game increased. This has obviously contributed to the lack of polish or general care by the developers, whether you want to claim that as the dreaded 80-hour grinds, or whether you want to attribute it to the corporate approach killing the creativity. Either way, it is still a fact. Part of the problem, in my opinion, is the trend chasing, you know, like how there were so many games that copied the Gears of War concept, or how zombies became the favorite concept for a game or side mode to it for a while. I can name quite a few of these trends. You have battle royales, open worlds and giant maps, I mean, even kart race game modes became a thing that was shoehorned in for a ton of series. Now here is one of the biggest issues that has occurred in more recent years. Many games are being sold in an unfinished state, not necessarily buggy but unfinished, so that work thereafter can be sold again as downloadable content. Technically, I am not against DLC, but too often that is used as a way to lighten the amount of content put into the base game. This was never done for earlier titles, and yes, it was possible back then. Games that had paid expansions still felt complete without them. Finally, here is the other issue that becomes the logical progression of our previous games of service. The idea that you pay for meaningless things in the game to make it easier or to look cooler. I don't have a problem with this being in free games. If retards who pay loads of cash allow for me to play on a multiplayer server for free, then I am all for it. But when it starts to be implemented into games I pay for, I have a problem. This just takes the lazy approach of DLC and amplifies it to extreme degrees. Eventually, I think we will start to see this put into every game, which annoys me. Take Genshin for an example. They have successfully taken a single-player action game concept and made it a free game of service. Yeah, it's free, but I am concerned that its success will be used as the reasoning for more games to be done in that manner. Less games will be released as a complete standalone product and more will be a free or subscription game that updates for more content. So what is done in place of making a game that will sell itself? Ridiculous marketing campaigns and internet hype. Don't get me wrong, I am sure there were advertising campaigns for old games too. But an ad in a magazine or TV is about all I ever remember seeing. Most of the sale for these were created through kids like me playing the game because of a friend or a demo in a store. The problem that many of these companies run into when they start the massive ad campaigns now is promising way too much in hopes that it gathers internet interest. But now everyone on the net is focused on this upcoming game and expecting it to be the next best thing in their life. Ever notice that some of the best games that people still remember from recent years just kind of dropped, seemingly no ad campaign at all? And for that matter, the collective focus of the net has become a double-edged sword recently. Let's say you are hyping up the upcoming game from your company and to the best of your ability, keeping the expectations within the limits of the game. Now along comes a retard who is angry that something they wanted in the game is missing, and then another retard comes who wants something that will be in the game gone. Soon there are active communities of people with nothing better to do blasting the company for not bending to their idea of what the game should be. It is just not a healthy way to advertise a game for anyone. Now finally I get disgusted with these marketing tactics because most of the time it is not about the game being discussed as much as company goodwill, public relations and all that. Here is an example in case you don't follow. I like Skyrim. No Name says it is lacking and that Morrowind is the best, but I really like Skyrim. Now back in 2018, Bethesda decided to make a big deal about Elder Scrolls 6. Yep, it still isn't around 4 years later. The only reason they made the announcement was to try to keep public relations positive and keep fans of the series on the edge of their seat. None of this circus is ever necessary. If a game is really good, the word will travel and it will sell. Anybody notice the boom for the retro market? Well, the companies who own those games certainly did. Think about all those first and second generation consoles they remade recently. Older games just tend to be better despite the lack in crisp graphics. So what makes so many of the older games classics then? It has what modern games lack, a whole lot more creativity and risks, and more care put into the design. How so, you ask? Well, let's think about the jump from the 16-bit generation to early 3D, for example. A leap to new possibilities opened up entire genres that we are very familiar with now. And along with all of what is now considered standard types, there were a ton of experimental titles. Quite a few of these moved to obscurity and quite a few gained cult following. Okay, what's the point? Most of the games held in high regard attempted to bring something new to the market rather than revisiting the same ideas. This can be easily seen in the 6th generation when developers could do more interesting things in their games due to massive system upgrades. So we get titles like Katamari on PlayStation, Pikmin on GameCube, Half-Life slated for Dreamcast but actually only released on PC, and Phantom Crash on Xbox. Every now and then there is a game that comes out that has that same kind of novelty, but for the majority of this stuff seems to be iterations of what came before. And let's be clear about this point, I don't mean to say that every new game has to make an entirely new genre. Honestly, everyone these days gladly settles for a complete and well-crafted one because they are so hard to find. What I am saying is the games that get lifelong fans are those that experiment, whether that be in a well-established genre or attempting something entirely new. Here is the final point of contentions for me today. I cannot stand games getting remade or sequels without reason. I don't think a year goes by without a new Call of Duty or a new Assassin's Creed. And why do we need a new title for these so often? They are basically just the same as the previous game, just a different setting. Once again, I am not saying a remake needs to change everything we know about a game, but what is the point in buying a new game when it is essentially the same as the previous? You are just buying the same game twice. I honestly like when a game series only lasts a few titles because of this. What is a good continuation to a game then? Honestly, I think it can be reduced down to a simple formula that should work in most cases. First off, let's discuss a remake. This is a concept that I normally would be against from the start since it normally is a method for a company to sell the same game again under the guise of some improvement to it. Improvement that I normally don't see. Making the graphics super high definition doesn't improve the game, and for my machine it makes the game slower. But I do understand that ancient games often do not play as easily with the limitations of the time. So what should be remade? I think mechanically everything from 6th gen console games and onward still play well today, so anything before that I can understand the desire. Tank controls, boxy level designs, bad controller setup, janky 3D architecture, all of this has been fixed since then to a few basic setups that everyone understands. The thing about remakes I don't like is its potential to ruin a game, either through poor work or rewriting it, and I know of both. So remakes, leave it be unless the game is too old to be appreciated and don't do anything stupid. Just remake the game. Now sequels, let's talk about Jet Set Radio. I played it for the first time last year. Being released on the Dreamcast kind of made it just out of my era. I grew up on its sequel Radio Future. However, though I will still say that the sequel is better, I can now see where it came from and what it improved upon. Overall, the original is really good. It has 3 city sectors that have few maps for each that connect if you wander. Great soundtrack as expected, a surprisingly involved graffiti system, and a wacky story to follow. Everything about the original is great. The only critique I have for it is the game level and time limit systems. I don't mind being forbidden from entering other portions of the city until I progress in the game. That is the good way of locking content for players. I just don't like the time limit placed upon me to tag all the walls. This is simply a style that was continuing from the arcade machines. The object is to make a player continue to feed coins into a machine. For that matter, given sim games that were on the Dreamcast like Crazy Taxi were arcade machines, Jet Set Radio might have had a machine, or at least it was made to be used for one. But I can get around that, especially since after you do it for each map of the city sector it opens up a level option to roam the entirety of it. So what was done for the sequel Jet Set Radio Future? To begin with, they took away the time limiter, which I really did not like, so already a plus. They also decided to jump the city 100 years or so in the setting, which had the effect of complicating the maps that we previously played on. They are similar enough to recognize but full of new pathways and hideaways. I really like how these maps can greatly expand once you get observant of the game's directions and proficient enough to achieve the combos needed to reach new areas. For this game, the development team just added a whole lot more characters, more maps, more graffiti options, including the option to make your own if you really want to. and it really used the future theme well. The game has got everything from a giant theme park map on top of skyscrapers to a ton of poor workers inside of a gigantic power plant. The history and story of the game is told in part through all the effort put into this scenery. And there is so much to unlock in the game. I haven't gotten everything to this day, but that is enough for this video. You want a conclusion? New games tend to suck. Yeah, there are outliers, but I see too many games focused on having giant bubble areas and forgetting to fill it, or those games where the selling point is the newest bestest graphics. Making a good game means focusing on the playability, whether that is focus on a good story or focus on tight game mechanics or focus on rewarding exploration. Take for instance, No Name really loved ICO and Shadow of the Colossus growing up. One of the reasons she does is the detail put into the worlds, the mysteries that the story did not tell her, and she spent days wondering and discovering extra things the game let her do. How do you think she feels about all those remakes of Colossus? Hates them. Updating the graphics doesn't make for a better game. Now if they'd instead rebuilt it with new or improved mechanics, I am sure she would have loved it. Go try some older games. You will definitely find some that are far more interesting than any modern game despite the archaic graphics. They just seem to have been made by people actually interested in playing the end result. Almost all games currently being made are based on an older title, and I can almost always guarantee the older title will be better. And I'm done. The lesson is over, children. Next time I will get back to my usual video styles. I love you all.